How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome to the channel. I'm the ChainBaker, and in today's video I'll show you how to make a cinnamon, oatmeal and raisin bread. It's pretty unique and super tasty, so let's go to the kitchen and have a closer look. Now isn't that beautiful? Oatmeal, cinnamon, raisins. Those flavors work perfectly in this bread. It is soft and sweet with a crunchy crust. It makes for perfect toasted breakfast sandwiches. Top it with peanut butter and jam, Nutella, or bananas and honey. If you're not into that, it will work with savoury toppings as well. So let's get right to it and see what we need to make this. We'll need some white bread flour, whole wheat flour, some oat bran or regular chopped oats. We'll also need some yeast, salt, honey, olive oil, cinnamon, water, milk and raisins. I'm actually using currants, but you can go either way, doesn't matter. Now as for the equipment, we'll need a bowl for mixing. I'm going to use a proofing basket, but you can make this as a freestanding loaf or a tin loaf. We'll also need scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe and something to slash the dough with. I'm going to use a razor blade, but you can use a sharp knife instead. Now for baking, I'm going to use my trusty old cast iron pan with a lid. Of course you can make this bread without it, but it will produce the better result. Okay, first things first, we need to soak the raisins, or currants in this case. Cover them in water and we'll leave them for around 30 minutes. The main purpose for soaking the raisins in bread like this is to make them soft, of course. When you go to slice your bread, your knife will cut through the raisins. If you don't soak them, you may tear the bread when you cut it. Now it's worth noting I'm using room temperature water. Drain your raisins well, give them a quick squeeze if you need to. We don't want any extra water in this dough. Speaking of water, for the bread we're actually using cold water, because we're kneading by hand this dough is going to warm up. And we don't want it getting too warm. We want a nice slow fermentation. So let's get on with it. Grab a large bowl, add the water, milk, yeast, salt, cinnamon, the oil, the oat bran, then add the honey and give it all a good mix. Now you can replace the oat bran with some regular oats in this recipe, but do use the chopped oats so they can absorb the water better. Also, if you don't want milk in the recipe, you can replace it with water. Now before we continue with the flour, mix everything well. You want to dissolve the salt and hydrate the yeast. Now add the whole wheat flour and the white flour. Then grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. Mix it in a bowl until there's no more dry flour left, and then pop it out on the table and we can start kneading it. This dough will be sticky, I must warn you. It is the honey, oats and whole wheat flour that make it so. But don't get discouraged, just keep kneading. And we want to knead it for around 7 minutes. And it will get stickier and stickier as you go. The best thing to do is to stop every minute or so, grab your dough scraper and scrape it all together. Take it off your hands, scrape it off the table, ball it all up and continue kneading. If you have a mixer at home, then you're in luck. Just pop it in there and it'll take around 5 minutes on medium speed. But not everyone owns a mixer, and that's why we always knead the dough by hand here. So after about 7 minutes by hand or 5 minutes in mixer, the dough should be relatively cohesive. It'll still be sticky, but that's totally normal. Now what we're going to do is spread it out on the table. But if you are using a mixer, don't take it out the bowl. Now add the raisins or the currants, spread them over evenly. Press them in so they stick to the dough. We need to seal them in, so you can pick up a corner of the dough and fold it over. And then just keep going around in a circle and repeating the move. At this point it will get sticky again. We have to knead this dough for another 2 minutes or so. And the raisins will be all annoying and flying around on the table. But don't get discouraged, just keep at it. Just 2 more minutes and we'll reach the finish line. Don't expect this to become smooth and shiny. It'll still be sticky once you finish kneading. But this is definitely ready to be fermented now. Now here's a quick note on cinnamon, and I only learned this today. As it turns out, it contains a chemical compound that slows down yeast activity. That's why we're using a relatively large amount of yeast in this recipe. And apparently mace, nutmeg and allspice berries will have the same effect. And I was always wondering why my hot cross buns were not rising. Well, let's get back to the method here. I wet my hands with water to handle this dough. That is the best way to prevent it from sticking. In the bowl it goes and we can take its temperature now. Around 26 degrees Celsius, 79 Fahrenheit is just about right for this. We want it to be slightly warmer because of the cinnamon. Now cover it up and let it ferment for an hour and a half. It should start puffing up a bit during this time, and after the first hour and a half of proofing we're going to give it a fold. Folding will help build tension in the dough. It will also degas it and equalize the temperature in it. My kitchen is quite cool, so the surface of the dough will cool down before the middle does. By folding it, we'll distribute that temperature evenly throughout the dough. So with a light dusting of flour, pop the dough out on the table with the smooth side down. Flatten it out, then fold the edge over the middle, going around the circle to reach point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up again and tighten it against the table. And what was on the outside is now in the middle. Place it back into the bowl, cover it up and leave it to proof for another hour and a half. Now it should really start puffing up, and if yours isn't, then just leave it for longer. But if it's rising rapidly, cut the fermentation time down. My dough is puffed up nicely, it's nice and wobbly. It's full of fermentation gases. Now I can do the final shaping. Dust the dough with flour once again, release it from the bowl using a scraper, pop it out on the table with the smooth side down. You can shape this in any shape you want, but I'm making an oblong loaf, and this is just one way to do it. Flatten the dough into a round disc, then fold the top two corners across each other in the middle. You want it to be kind of like a triangle shape. Now you just need to roll it up. Start from the top, roll it backwards and push it forward. To make it nice and tight, you want to roll it and tuck it forwards. Once you get down to the bottom, pinch the seam together. That's the shaping done. And from here on you could leave it like this. That will be perfectly fine, but I decided to add an extra step. I'm going to coat this loaf in oat flakes. To do this, place your loaf on the table smooth side up. Now wet your hand and rub it all over the loaf. You want to wet the whole surface. If you feel that it's a bit dry, do it twice. If you don't do this, all your toppings will fall off. Spread your toppings out on a large tray. Now you don't have to use oats, you can use seeds, nuts, whatever you like. Dry your hands before handling the loaf, or else all the oats might end up on your fingers instead of the bread. Now watch closely. You want to roll the loaf from one side to the other. This will give it a nice even coverage of oats, or any toppings that you decide to use. And once you've done the first roll, then just roll it around a little bit more. But do handle it gently, you don't want to distort it. We have already covered the top of the loaf, and that would be enough. I just decided to go the whole way and cover the whole loaf, and that is a little bit more risky. Anyway, after covering the loaf, you can go in the bread basket. Make sure that the seam is pointing up. It's quite easy to lose it once the loaf is covered in oats. The weight of the dough pressing against the basket will make the oats stick even better. We're ready for the final proof now. It should take around an hour and a half. It will depend on the temperature of your kitchen, of course. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven. 200 degrees Celsius, which is 390 Fahrenheit, fan off, and also preheat your pan. That is puffed up beautifully. There's a nice dome shape. You can just see how full of gas it is. It's safe to say it's baking time. Grab your hot pan out of the oven. If you don't have one of these pans, you can bake it on a preheated tray. Now carefully place the dough in a hot pan. And this is why we put it in the basket with the seam side pointing up. Of course now it's upside down. Take a razor blade or a sharp knife and score the loaf. I went slowly this time because there's raisins and oats in the way. 1.5 centimeters or about half an inch deep should be enough. Cut it from one end to the other so it opens up evenly. If you need to correct it, do it. You could also cut it at an angle, but regardless of what you do, cover it with a lid and bake it for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, remove the lid. This is always my favorite part. But of course we're not finished yet. This needs to go back in the oven for another 20 minutes or so. We want the part along the cut to be nicely browned. And there you have it. A beautiful oatmeal, cinnamon and raisin bread. When you pull this out the oven, your kitchen will smell absolutely amazing. And don't make your neighbors too jealous. Go and share this bread. I think you would agree when I say that it was well worth the effort. And it's the same with anything in life. You put in some work, you get good results. And today, we got a tasty loaf of bread. So what do you think of this recipe? Is it something you would try? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.